After 1,000 chapters, the Gorosei finally make their move. But what exactly is their motive? After over 1,000 chapters, the Gorosei finally make their move. But what exactly is their motive? In chapter 1073, we continue where we left off on Egghead Island. After Stussy takes out Kaku, she quickly turns her attention to Luchi. Luchi quickly makes a decision to attack her, but she avoids this with the use of some version of Kamiye. This catches Luchi off guard and gives Stussy the opportunity to get a piece of sea prism stone that she had hidden in her lipstick in contact with Luchi's skin, allowing her to bite and knock out Luchi with little to no retaliation. Based on her dialogue with Luchi, it seems like in a straight up fight, Stussy isn't confident that she would be able to beat Kaku and Luchi. So that gives us a rough idea on how powerful she may be, but especially in her case, I don't think it really matters that much because she seems to fight and make decisions thoughtfully and probably wouldn't get herself into a situation that she couldn't get out of or come out on top of. We go on to see that the Seraphim were still fulfilling the order that Luchi gave him to destroy the laboratory. And since Stussy is on the same ranking in the Seraphim command ranking, she isn't able to overwrite this order. So we see them quickly destroy the laboratory, and Zoro has a very brief clash with the Mihawk Seraphim, which doesn't really go anywhere, but he doesn't really seem phased or really pushed too far by this clash. In fact, Mihawk seems a little bit more so, Seraphim Mihawk that is, because he's sweating and he looks very concerned. There's a weird comment that Zoro makes that he sees a little bit more humanity the more he looks at them, which is a weird comment, and I think it's probably hinting at them sort of gaining their own sentience. Later this chapter I think it was last chapter, we do see that Vegapunk says they are given a little bit of sentience so they can make their own decisions, and that's how they ended up getting past the barrier in the first place, but I wouldn't be surprised if it develops further and they become able to make their own choices fully. But since Stussy cannot overwrite this order, one of the Vegapunks or the Gorosei would have to give an order to tell them to stop. So Edison, one of the Vegapunks, is able to close the gap and get them to hear his order, making them stop from destroying the lab any further. We continue on to see that Luffy is still looking for Bonnie and Vegapunk, but right after that we see some narrator cards that say that an event will occur that Vegapunk will disappear, or the disappearance of Vegapunk. And honestly guys, I'm taking this pretty seriously and pretty literally, because every time we get narrator cards it's always something serious, and I don't think it's something we should overlook. We do know that the laboratory that they were in was the one that got destroyed, so Bonnie and Vegapunk were somewhere in the laboratory when all of the Seraphim sent their laser beams and sword slashes to attack it. Now they could have got lost somehow in there, but I don't think that's the case. I'm not sure, maybe Vegapunk did something to get them away, maybe Bonnie did something that made something happen with Kuma and they got sent flying to something, or maybe something that happens later this chapter has some sort of connection to this. But right after that, we cut away to a flashback on Sphinx Island where we see that the Marines found the island and they're basically trying to get money off of them because they found out it was Whitebeard's island as well, his home island. And since they're not part of the world government, they are doing whatever they want. And it really just makes the world government and the Marines look really bad because it's people like him who aren't really supposed to be Marines because they're not just, they don't follow any real sense of justice, to the point where they're willing to kill and extort kids for money. So honestly, this is a bad look for the world government. But before we can get too far, we see Edward Weevil has found the hometown, or at least maybe he already knew about it. I'm assuming he just found it because we know for a fact that they haven't met with Marco yet. So at that point, this was probably the first time they found the island, but something Weevil says later is kind of weird about that. I think it's important to note before the flashback ends, we do see that the Marines are calling for backups because they know that Edward Weevil is still on Sphinx Island. We then cut back to current time where Marco's back on the island with another familiar face. So we get a formal Oda box introduction to the former Rocks pirate member and self-proclaimed scientist and mad resident Miss Buckingham, or Buckingham Stussy. Before we go forward, the one thing that I did want to mention about Weevil is when he first gets to the island, he says, "Don't lay your hands on my hometown." My hometown. But in the panel after, he said, "This is Dada's hometown." So I think that was a weird thing, and it could be a translation thing, but I could be hinting at something else, which I'll get into later and actually make a full video on later this week. So Marco and Miss Buckingham have a brief conversation about him not believing if Whitebeard was actually a relative to Weevil, but she claims that there's one person who can prove it, and that's Dr. Vegapunk. which is another interesting thing which leads to a lot of theories. The main one being that Weevil is actually a clone of Whitebeard instead of being a son of Whitebeard. For two reasons I think this is good evidence for it, because she says, surely you believe that Whitebeard and Weevil are blood related, right? She doesn't say, oh, you believe that Weevil is Whitebeard's son, right? That sounds like the most normal way to put that sentence. Phrasing it like they're not blood related seems like there's some caveat. And then the next thing, there's one person that can prove it, it's Dr. Vegapunk. I think that's strange, because why would Dr. Vegapunk be able to prove it if he didn't have really any connection to the two of them? Like, I know Miss Buckingham was part of the mad scientist, but what gives him the authority to decide whose son is whose son? That is what leads me to believe that he had some hand in the creation of Weevil, and he's not really his son and more of a clone. But like I said, we'll get into that in another video later this week. To end the chapter off, we cut over to some marine battleships where we hear Kizaru talking to some random marines, talking about testing some poison. We also see a world government flag, which leads us to believe that it's not just marines, it's not just Kizaru, he's also in the company of the world government, which could be CP agents or somebody else. In a few panels, we see it's somebody much more important, someone we've never seen out of the room of authority, and someone we really haven't seen anything from at all. We didn't even know their name. Oda finally reveals the name of one of the 5 Elder Stars, one of the Gorosei, which is J. Garcia Saturn, or Saint J. Garcia Saturn, because they are a celestial dragon at the end of the day, so they have Saint in front of all their names. So it seems like we cut into the middle of a conversation where Saint Garcia, or Saint J. Garcia I mean, was asking or mentioning Vegapunk for some reason, and Kizaru replies, oh, Vegapunk I see, have you met each other? And J. Garcia says, yes, once a long time ago, and he's quite disappointed in how things are becoming. And guys, this is a crazy reveal. This is one of the bigger reveals we've had in the story so far, because Oda has done so much to hide the identities or any real information on the 5 Elder Stars or the Gorosei from us for over 20 years now. We barely know anything about them, and the fact that we've finally seen them like make any sort of move, it just shows how far we are in the story. But what could this possibly mean? We know Kizaru was on his way to Egghead Island before any of this even happened, so most likely Saint J. Garcia was on his way there as well. What could he have been doing there, and why does he seem to have some sort of connection to Vegapunk? More so than any other government affiliate, he seems like he maybe had a personal meeting with him rather than a government meeting with him. And honestly, this is probably what's connected to the disappearance of Vegapunk that was hinted at by the narrator, but I don't know how it's going to happen or if he's already disappeared, because it seemed like he's already disappeared because Luffy wasn't able to find him still. But if that's not the case, then I can definitely see Kizaru just making his move on Egghead Island and not even trying to deal with fighting the Straw Hats, because at the end of the day, he can't take on their whole crew. He probably can't even take on Luffy, alone. He can obviously go to a high diff fight, but he won't be getting anything done. So I think if Vegapunk isn't already missing, once he gets to Egghead Island, Kizaru is going to make it his mission to try to take Vegapunk. Another thing is that the Gorosei are above Vegapunk in the Seraphim hierarchy. So if he wants to make a command once he gets there, he has complete control over them, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop him. Unless Vegapunk has some sort of failsafe in place so that if something happens like this, he can take control no matter what. But honestly, I don't think the Gorosei would have let that happen, and they would have done tests to see if that was the case. And now that Vegapunk is going to be missing, I think there's going to be a storyline with Vegapunk and Kuma being taken by the world government, and then Bonnie joins up with the Straw Hats, and then the revolutionaries get involved, and that's how the direct attack on the world government is going to start off, and how Luffy and Dragon finally meet each other. Also, I wonder if only the Stella body, the main body of Vegapunk, is going to go missing. That's what I'm assuming, because the other ones are still around, and with the Straw Hats being right there, I don't really see how that can happen, but it's always a possibility, and I don't want to rule it out. But yeah, guys, what do you guys think about this chapter? How do you think Vegapunk is going to go missing? Do you think he's already missing? How is this arc going to get involved? And why is the Elder Star, one of the Gorosei, even on their way to Egghead Island in the first place? Especially since they should have known that CP0 were on their way to assassinate Vegapunk So going there kind of makes no sense unless they had some sort of suspicion that Vegapunk had some sort of ancient technology and they're going to inspect it after Vegapunk was assassinated in this case. But I don't know, it's just a theory. I know we have a lot to discuss. We are on break this week, so hopefully I can get out a few more videos, discussing this chapter and a few other things. But yeah guys, like I said, let me know your thoughts on the chapter in the comments below. If you like this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I appreciate all the support I've been getting, so I'm going to try to continue to put up more content so I can improve and grow my channel. But with that being said, look out for a video in the next couple of days. But until then, later.